Welcome to my YouTube channel. Today we are explaining the history and real facts about witches and witchcraft. Are witches real? How many women were killed during the Great Witch Hunt? What is the Book of Shadows? Their origin, reality, and how they were hunted. And some common concepts related to witches. Before we start, please subscribe our channel to watch more interesting videos like this. Let's jump into the video. Witches, who they are. Witches were perceived as evil beings by early Christians in Europe, inspiring the iconic Halloween figure. Images of witches have appeared in various forms throughout history, from evil, wart-nosed, smelly, dirty women huddling over a cauldron of boiling liquid to hag-faced, cackling beings riding through the sky on brooms wearing pointy hats. In pop culture, the witch has been portrayed as a benevolent, nose-twitching suburban housewife, an awkward teenager learning to control her powers, and a trio of charmed sisters battling the forces of evil. The real history of witches, however, is dark and, often for the witches, deadly. Over 200 people who were accused of being witches were burnt to death in South Africa between the beginning of 1994 and mid-1995. These killings were not legal executions, but took place at the hands of lynch mobs, mostly from the communities in which the accused lived. Origin of witches. Early witches were people who practiced witchcraft, using magic spells and calling upon spirits for help or to bring about change. Most witches were thought to be pagans doing the devil's work. Many, however, were simply natural healers or so-called wise women, whose choice of profession was misunderstood. It's unclear exactly when witches came on the historical scene, but one of the earliest records of a witch is in the Bible, in the book of 1 Samuel, thought to be written between 931 BC and 721 BC. It tells the story of when King Saul sought the witch of Endor to summon the dead prophet Samuel's spirit to help him defeat the Philistine army. The witch roused Samuel, who then prophesied the death of Saul and his sons. The next day, according to the Bible, Saul's sons died in battle, and Saul committed suicide. Other Old Testament verses condemn witches, such as the oft-cited Exodus 22:18, which says, "Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live." Additional biblical passages caution against divination, chanting, or using witches to contact the dead. History books relates to witches are Malleus Maleficarum. Witch hysteria really took hold in Europe during the mid-1400s, when many accused witches confessed, often under torture, to a variety of wicked behaviors. Within a century, witch hunts were common, and most of the accused were executed by burning at the stake or hanging. Single women, widows, and other women on the margins of society were especially targeted. Between the years 1500 and 1660, up to 80,000 suspected witches were put to death in Europe. Around 80% of them were women thought to be in cahoots with the devil and filled with lust. Germany had the highest witchcraft execution rate, while Ireland had the lowest. The publication of Malleus Maleficarum, written by two well-respected German Dominicans in 1486, likely spurred witch mania to go viral. The book, usually translated as The Hammer of Witches, was essentially a guide on how to identify, hunt, and interrogate witches. Salem witch trials. As witch hysteria decreased in Europe, it grew in the New World, which was reeling from wars between the French and British, a smallpox epidemic, and the ongoing fear of attacks from neighboring Native American tribes. The tense atmosphere was ripe for finding scapegoats. Probably the best-known witch trials took place in Salem, Massachusetts in 1692. The Salem witch trials began when 9-year-old Elizabeth Parris and 11-year-old Abigail Williams began suffering from fits, body contortions, and uncontrolled screaming. As more young women began to exhibit symptoms, mass hysteria ensued, and 3 women were accused of witchcraft: Sarah Good, Sarah Osborne, and Tituba, an enslaved woman owned by Parris's father. Tituba confessed to being a witch and began accusing others of using black magic. On June 10th, Bridget Bishop became the first accused witch to be put to death during the Salem witch trials when she was hanged at the Salem gallows. Ultimately, around 150 people were accused and 18 were put to death. Women weren't the only victims of the Salem witch trials. 6 men were also convicted and executed. Are witches real? One of the most famous witches in Virginia's history is Grace Sherwood, whose neighbors alleged she killed their pigs and hexed their cotton. Other accusations followed, and Sherwood was brought to trial in 1706. The court decided to use a controversial water test to determine her guilt or innocence. Sherwood's arms and legs were bound, and she was thrown into a body of water. It was thought if she sank, she was innocent; if she floated, she was guilty. Sherwood didn't sink and was convicted of being a witch. She wasn't killed but put in prison and for 8 years. A satirical article about a witch trial in New Jersey was published in 1730 in the Pennsylvania Gazette. It brought to light the ridiculousness of some witchcraft accusations. It wasn't long before witch mania died down in the New World and laws were passed to help protect people from being wrongly accused and convicted. The Great Witch Hunt. The Great Witch Hunt of the 16th and 17th centuries, though it was an anomaly in Christian history, was far more than that. It was, in the most literal and precise meaning of the word, satanic. Cohn gave his work on the topic the title of Europe's Inner Demons, and what was perhaps needed then was the response of some of the Zionists. Those demons needed to be exorcised. The actual response, for the most part, was denial. The Enlightenment view was that witchcraft and sorcery do not really exist, that exorcism is primitive, and that modern man who uses electricity cannot take seriously any belief in demons. But the use of electricity may itself become demonic, as its use as an instrument of torture in South Africa and elsewhere attests. The Soviet Gulag and Nazi Holocaust show that denial has failed to neutralize Europe's inner demons. Book of Shadows. Modern-day witches of the Western world still struggle to shake their historical stereotype. Most practice Wicca, an official religion in the United States and Canada. Wiccans avoid evil and the appearance of evil at all costs. Their motto is to harm none, and they strive to live a peaceful, tolerant, and balanced life in tune with nature and humanity. Many modern-day witches still perform witchcraft, but there's seldom anything sinister about it. Their spells and incantations are often derived from their Book of Shadows, a 20th century collection of wisdom and witchcraft, and can be compared to the act of prayer in other religions. A modern-day witchcraft potion is more likely to be an herbal remedy for the flu instead of a hex to harm someone. There are few common concepts related to witches. Let me clear those concepts. Belief 1. Witches were actually witches. This one is almost entirely a myth. During the early modern period, approximately 90,000 women and men were accused of witchcraft in Europe, about half of whom were executed. The vast majority of those accused did not identify as witches, while some did come to think, after being tortured, that they may have unknowingly practiced witchcraft. A small group of people also worked as cunning people, a similar concept to a village wise man or woman. A cunning man or woman was someone people consulted to heal their illnesses, to find lost or stolen goods, or to heal bewitchment. Sometimes, cunning people could practice for decades in a village before ever coming under suspicion of witchcraft. Importantly, cunning people were not automatically assumed to be witches. Witchcraft in Europe was instead associated with the devil, from whom witches were believed to gain their powers. We do know that some people in Europe at the time did practice harmful magic. Historians and archaeologists have found many examples of dolls and animal hearts pierced with pins. These objects were used both to attack and to protect. For the most part though, those accused of witchcraft were accused because of an interpersonal conflict, not because they ever practiced magic or witchcraft. Belief 2. Witches were women. The answer is yes and no. During the period of witchcraft trials in Europe, women were more likely to be accused of and executed for witchcraft. But men could also be accused of practicing witchcraft. And in some countries they were actually more likely than women to come under suspicion. For example, over 90% of accused witches in Iceland were male. Russia and Estonia also prosecuted more men than women for witchcraft. However, for the most part, those accused of being witches were women. In England, women made up approximately 90% of the accused in the largely German-speaking Holy Roman Empire. This number was 76% in Hungary, 90% in Switzerland, over 95%, and in parts of France, 76%. Both men and women were called witches and were often accused of performing harmful magic. Men were sometimes accused of practicing more learned types of magic, such as conjuring demons, but women could be accused of these crimes too. Belief 3. Wiccan and pagan traditions continue earlier beliefs and practices. Well, this is a tricky one. The short answer is no, but, of course, it's more complicated than that. The biggest difference between those accused of witchcraft in the past and those who embrace this label today is that those in the past did not identify as witches. They did not practice witchcraft. They were not part of any type of underground religion or movement. Some people did practice harmful magic, but beliefs about witches' Sabbaths and covens were all in the heads of the accusers and did not reflect reality. Thank you for watching this video. If you like this video, please do like and share. Please subscribe our channel to watch more videos like this.